Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining today's stream. It's 12th of February, 11 a.m. In the morning, Moscow time, and as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments. And well, if you like the news segment, if you consider my reading on the big picture interesting and useful, please share your opinion about it, like the video, leave a commentary, and if there are going to be any questions or the donations during the stream from any of the support platforms, of course, I will react on it after the news segment. As you can notice, I had to make some changes. Usually on YouTube, I have last several days pre-recorded video and a live stream on Rumble, but later on today, I have a job interview, and hopefully it will work out good. So therefore, I had to make these changes. And if everything goes okay, dear friends, then due to this additional job, of course, I will have to make some changes in the schedule, in the programming, and hopefully our community will take it with understanding. I will let you know. I will let you know upfront about any changes that might happen, right, in programs. I will try my best to maintain news updates on daily basis, no matter how tired I'm gonna be or whatever, right? Okay, that's being said, dear friends, let's go through some news and a lot to unpack, really, a lot to unpack. Although I want to thank John before I start for a $6 donation early this morning from through PayPal. Thank you very much, John, for your donation. And comment from John was good luck. Thanks for your hard work. I do trust Russia. Believe not anything the U.S. says. This is a comment from John. Thank you very much once again if you're watching this program. And let's go through some news now. Let's go through some news, and well, let's start with the update about work of Russian air defense systems past night. Dear friends, a few days ago there was quite a few drones that were intercepted, launched by Kyiv regime with assistance of NATO, and they're intercepted by Russian forces. And I have said that most likely towards the end of the week we will see significant activization of these long-range strikes. Seems like Kyiv regime and then NATO backers are stockpiling drones, and that's exactly what is happening. Yesterday there was a significant increase in drone launches, long-range strikes on Russia, and today the same situation. RIA Novosti is reporting, based on Defense Ministry's latest update, that air defense of the Russian Federation destroyed 106 drones that was launched by hostile side. I can give you some details on this strike. Russian fighters shot down 24 drones over the Belgorod region, 21 over the Bryansk, 19 over the Voronezh, 13 over the Tambov. Another 9 drones were neutralized in Nizhny Novgorod region, 5 in Crimea over the waters of the Sea of Azov. Also 3 in Rostov region, 2 in Lipetsk, 1 each over the Krasnodar Krai and the Black Sea, as well as Kursk, Smolensk, and Volgograd region. Unfortunately, quite a vast geography of these long-range strikes on Russian Federation conducted by NATO and NATO proxy Kyiv regime, and yet again, not always possible to intercept 100% of the incoming targets, even by best air defense systems in the world, as Russia has. And therefore, we have also reports about casualties and damage as a result of this long-range attack on the Russian Federation. For example, Kommersant newspaper is reporting that village near Volgograd was evacuated due to fire at the military facility. And fire erupted as a result of this long-range strike by enemy. The Volgograd region has been hit by rocket fire. Regional governor Andrei Bacharov announced, and by rocket fire, even though there is no specifics when it comes to missiles, there is several type of long-range missiles that NATO is deploying against Russia and NATO proxies at this moment. That is British Storm Shadow cruise missiles, French Scalp PG cruise missiles, and US-made ATACMS tactical missiles, also relatively long range, 300 plus kilometers. And I guess one of those missiles were used there. One of those types of missiles were used there on this during this attack. Air defense systems are repelling the attack. Fallen debris caused fire at the Ministry of Defense facility near the village of Kotluban. Residents of the village are being evacuated. And then quote here, in order to ensure the safety of the civilian population from the threat of their detonation during their firefighting, and evacuation of the population of the nearby village of Kotluban has been announced and is underway. The press service of the Volgograd region administration quoted Bacharov as saying, and Andrei Bacharov is a governor, of course, in the Volgograd region. And this is not all. We also have this report that as a result of Kyiv regime strike, there were damage and casualties and the damage to infrastructure in Michurinsk settlement in the Tambov region. So drone attack overnight in Michurinsk, Tambov Oblast damaged the infrastructure and caused fires, according to city mayor Maxim Kharnikov. Regional governor Evgeny Pervishov reported that preliminary reports indicate 2 people were injured as a result of this attack. And of course, medics are doing their best to provide all the necessary assistance to the wounded civilians. So as you can see, unfortunately, tragically, every now and then, some missiles, some drones that are launched by NATO and NATO proxy regime are managing to penetrate or avoid Russian air defense systems and reach the targets. Yet again, even best air defense system is unable to intercept 100% of the incoming targets constantly, always 100% of their time. But vast majority of incoming targets are intercepted by Russian air defense systems, and their tens of thousands of lives are saved as a result of this professional work of Russian military. Obviously, Russian armed forces are conducting retaliatory strikes on military, logistical, and energy infrastructure of the Kyiv regime, Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. And I reported this morning on my Telegram and Twitter X page that, according to several sources, last night Russian armed forces launched a long-range precision strike against the military, logistical, and energy infrastructure of the NATO-occupied regime in Ukraine, or on NATO-occupied, temporarily NATO-occupied territory of Ukraine, let's say, in the areas of Kharkov, Sumy, Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporozhye, Odessa, and other directions. And right now on your screen, you can see some of the pictures, some of the screenshots, basically, of aftermath of these Russian long-range strikes. Reports are that 2 thermal power plants were hit, for example, in the Kiev region. And elsewhere, military and logistical infrastructure also was damaged, including in Odessa. And also, we have this report from Russian media that Russian troops struck Ukrainian armed forces reserves in the Kharkov region. And I can give you details on that. Iskander missile systems and Tornado multiple launch rocket systems of the Russian armed forces were launched to strike Ukrainian Air Forces reserves concentrated in the area of Kharkov region. Russian security agencies told the RIA Novosti. The enemy lost up to company of personnel killed and wounded, and as well as multiple launch rocket system and up to 20 different types of trucks, vehicles, and so on. So as you can see, dear friends, Russian militaries are very active to neutralize the military capabilities of their hostile side and to dealt as much damage to the enemy as possible. And well, unfortunately, there is still a long way to go until a complete demilitarization and the denazification of Kyiv controlled territory, as it is a main goal of one of the main goals of a special military operation, and there seems like a number of criminals and terrorists on Kyiv-controlled territory, including from Kyiv regime's forces, are still not just acting tough, but probably still believing in their capabilities. And on this matter, for example, Kyiv regime and Kyiv regime's forces are threatening Hungary with invasion. You might be surprised, but yes, that's what it is. There was a gathering in a Kyiv-controlled territory of Ukrainian Nazis and their fascists. Right now on your screen, you can see, by the way, what was the behind, what kind of banner was the behind of these Nazis. You can see face of Stepan Bandera there. And this forum was called Bandera Readings, right? So they are not hiding anything, right? They are not even trying to hide that they are Nazis and the fascists, right? And are admiring this Bandera, a creature who was a mass murderer, obviously, during the Second World War, a Nazi collaborator, and even Nazi SS units were shocked by brutality of Bandera and all the Banderites and these Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists, right, that were collaborating with Nazis and killing literally everybody that they did not like, Jews, Russians, everyone, right? And well, they had a gathering, and decorated by Zelensky, Ukrainian so-called officer, threatened Hungary with invasion. There was a direct threats and insults towards the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and well, they are not even trying to hide these Ukrainian Nazis, that they are now on intimidation mode against Hungary, and this is just the beginning. I'm quite sure Budapest is paying close attention to these developments, and Hungarian militaries and security services are preparing eventually to deal with the Ukrainian fascists and the Nazis, especially when Hungary will reclaim Transcarpathia region in the western Ukraine that used to be part of Hungary before First World War, right? Also, dear friends, when it comes to this proxy war that West is waging against Russia, let me give you this additional information that Czech munition scheme for a Kyiv regime faces funding shortfalls, according to NATO officials. And you remember Prague, more than a year ago now, if I remember correctly, 2 years, I guess, come up with initiative to transfer to Kyiv regime millions of shells, millions of munition of a different type. First of all, artillery shells, and they were requiring 5 billion euros for this scheme to work. And from this 5 billion, they only managed to accumulate from all over their collective West 1.5 billion, which is a lot, obviously. Unfortunately, they did manage to accumulate that sum, but they failed big time in their plans to accumulate 5 billion. This is a definitely indicator that appetite in their collective West is decreasing, appetite to allocate more and more billions to prolong this proxy war against Russia, at least in number of European countries, that is. I'm not talking about Germany, obviously. I'm not talking about UK, France, these countries that are controlled by globalist puppets. Of course, these countries will spend to the last euro that they have to prolong this war as much as possible, because leadership of these countries, so-called leadership, has no care about their own countrymen, their own countries, their own economies. All they are focused on is to deal as much damage to Russian Federation and Russian people as they possibly can, because they are psychopaths, right? Total Russia haters, xenophobes, scum of humanity. That's what the leadership of these NATO member states are. Anyways, let's continue with some other news. Andrea Novosti is reporting, and I mentioned this yesterday, I believe, that there was an article in the Financial Times, according to which allegedly Zelensky was planning on 24th of February to make an announcement about elections on the Kyiv-controlled territory, and also a referendum about alleged peace deal, which is not even agreed yet, right? There is nothing to conduct a referendum. I shared yesterday my skeptical take on this situation, because it's easy to say that you might hold either referendum or the elections, but to actually implement necessary policies, it's not going to be easy, because who's going to be eligible to vote either during the referendum or during the elections? Millions of people are outside of Kyiv controlled territory, outside of Ukraine, in Western Europe, in North America, in Latin America. Millions of citizens of Ukraine are here in Russian Federation. Also, we should keep in mind that because Kyiv regime is not acknowledging that Donbass, Novorossiya, and Crimea are part of Russia, then based on constitution of Ukraine, residents that are living there are Ukrainian citizens in that case, right? So will they be able to vote? Will Kyiv regime allow this to happen? Of course, no. Of course not. Of course, Kyiv regime and its globalist backers, NATO backers, will do everything to cut off all the citizens of Ukraine that are living on Russian territory from either elections or the referendum whenever these events are gonna take place. We all understand this, and they will try only to allow voting in Kyiv-controlled territory, so that people will be terrorized and forced to vote in a way that globalists want, and also people that are living in Western, collective West countries, right? So that they will vote in a way that globalists want. But everyone else will be cut off, right? Whenever either elections or referendums going to be held, we all understand this. And therefore, if we add some other indicators that holding elections in upcoming several months going to be impossible, then I shared my skepticism yesterday that this is some sort of deception operation, that Western world is coming up again now. And that's exactly what is happening, by the way. Financial Times went as far as to say that the elections and the referendum might be held by 15th of May. Total nonsense, by the way, not happening. And because Russia didn't buy this crap, clearly there was a statements, comments from Russian side, no one buying into this nonsense, right? Western elites quickly realized that yes, this scheme is just not working, right? This scam is not working. And later on, Zelensky himself denied reports of his intention to announce their elections on 24th of February. And what is also interesting, yesterday, the regime's propaganda outlets, Times of Ukraine, for example, come up with yet another deception operation, another false narrative that are allegedly claiming that Kyiv is considering sending a delegation to Moscow for talks. And I believe very same Zelensky later on rejected this claim, because again, this false narrative also did not enter anywhere. People did not buy into this nonsense either. But yet again, out of desperation, Kyiv regime and its Western backers are acting now more and more chaotically, and there seems like there is a significant issues now in terms of communication inside the camp of our enemies, right? And different groups are pushing different false narratives that quite often are contradicting each other, right? So probably this chaotic situation in the camp of our enemies will only intensify as time goes by, and as Russian militaries will liberate more and more people and more territories on line of contact, and as situation for globalists and their allies, neocons, Zionists, and so on, will continue to further deteriorate. And I remind you, dear friends, that in past several days, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was making headlines, a lot of headlines, due to his interviews to a number of media outlets and his appearances on different events, right? And I would not go into his statements. In my previous updates, I mentioned this subject, this topic. But I will just remind you that Lavrov stated that Moscow will return all historically Russian land to its rightful home. And this is all we need to know basically about Moscow's stand, right? And because Lavrov's statements was very, very strong, especially in terms of disappointment with the US administration, which, according to Lavrov, moved away from Anchorage spirit, Anchorage agreements, right, and began acting contrary to what agreements were reached in Anchorage. Lavrov went to make some very stronger statements. And to me personally, I don't know what is your take difference, but to me personally, this was a clearly indicator that maybe Russian President Vladimir Putin had enough, right? And maybe he is about to make a significant change in his approach towards the U.S. administration. And if my understanding of the situation is correct, then soon, maybe even before end of this week, we will hear about it. We will hear about it, and we will see changes in Moscow's approach towards the administration. Putin clearly tried, by the way. I mean, no one can say that President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, did not try to build the bridges with the new administration in US. He tried, and he actually put his reputation on the line, right? Because he knew perfectly well, and his inner circle, his administration knew perfectly well that these contacts with the American side were not popular among a significant part of public here in Russia, right? And many were frustrated because nobody really believed that there is any sense, right, to talk to American leadership right now, because they will never honor any agreement whatsoever, because they don't know how to do so. But nevertheless, Russian president tried, right, because he clearly wants to reach a political resolution to this crisis, right? But this diplomacy from his side did not really work, it seems like, and the statements from Lavrov in past several days, strong statements, are indicator to me personally that maybe Kremlin will shift significantly now its take towards the Washington, towards the White House, and that will of course, on its part, will have significant influence on Russia's next steps. Let's say this way, right? Either through, in terms of military developments or political, geopolitical steps, right? We will see. By the way, and I think these strong statements of Lavrov reach Washington also. And some individuals there in Washington began panicking because they are realizing that their deception operation that they were engaged, right, while pretending to be interested in the de-escalation with Moscow is failing, right? Probably some elements in the Trump administration began understanding that, well, Putin had enough of this of their games, right? And there may be because of this, U.S. Treasury Secretary made statements that, well, U.S. is considering to lift some restrictions, some sanctions on Russian energy sector, Russian oil, if peace agreement will be reached. Yet again, deception, by the way, they're not going to lift nothing, right? But while making such statements, they are trying to keep Moscow still in these useless talks, right? And to try more and more to somehow mislead the Russian leadership, mislead Moscow. But I don't think this will work. Putin probably really fed up with the White House, with the Trump administration, and I think we're going to see significant changes in the Russian approach in near future. But anyways, let me share with you what Scott Bessent is coming up now with. So U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated that restrictions on Russian oil could be lifted after a peace agreement on Ukrainian crisis is reached. Bessent did not rule out declining in the global energy prices if settlement can be reached with Venezuela, Iran, Russia, and Ukraine, then a lot of oil will be available to their markets, and the Treasury will lift sanctions on it. Thus, quoted him as saying, citing Fox News, and yet again, by the way, this attempt from Trump's administration to keep Moscow in these useless talks and to mislead Moscow further will fail. I'm quite sure at this point, quite sure about it, because Moscow really tried, man. Moscow really tried. Putin really tried to build bridges, and it did not work. It didn't work. There was some agreements reached in Anchorage, but U.S. did not honor these agreements. Trump did not honor these agreements. His administration did not honor these agreements. Exactly opposite happened, and Washington further intensified anti-Russian policies, right? And policies matter, by the way. Talk is cheap. Policies matter, right? And now I think no matter what kind of additional deception operations Washington gonna generate, they would not be able to further mislead Russian leadership. I think whatever trust or whatever hope Putin had about reaching agreement with Washington probably is disappeared, dead now, right? And also on the topic of energy sector and Washington lifting sanctions on Russian energy, I remind you, dear friends, that at max level, energy sector brings to Russian budget maximum, in best years, about 15 to 20, maximum 22%, right, of their revenues. And one should keep in mind, by the way, that half of it is domestic market, right? So minus the half, then this another 50% has to be halved also, because half of the Russian exports, practically half of the Russian exports, are going to China, and China not going to stop buying Russian energy. So what is left? What is left? Pennies, by the way. And I still find it difficult to understand what the hell is wrong with either U.S. leadership or the leadership of the Western world, generally speaking, when they still pushing this narrative that Russia is a gas station, and if they can manipulate with they can manipulate with Russia, or they can influence Russian policy making with their pressure on Russian energy sector. They cannot. And they're going to find out soon. Anyways, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. And Vzгляд newspaper is reporting that NATO has decided to involve tens of thousands of troops in exercises in Arctic. And you guessed against which country these exercises are, and against for war against which countries NATO is preparing. It's Russia, right? Russia. And how many times I have said that globalists have plans to launch a direct open war with Russia and sacrifice at least number of European NATO member states, among them Finland, obviously, potentially Norway, Baltic Chihuahuas, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and some others, right? And that's exactly what is happening. This news is exactly about that. When it comes to Arctic, by the way, there is 2 or 3 countries, right, that can be actively used against Russia: Finland, Norway, Sweden. Sweden is in between Finland and Norway, but nevertheless, they will be used there too. They will be sacrificed too. And we know this. Russia knows this, right? And Russia is preparing. And if globalists dare to actually go ahead with these plans and provoke direct conflict with the Russian Federation, they will find out very quickly. That they made a fatal mistake, because Russian leadership, Russian president, former Russian president, current foreign minister, and many other officials have said it on a number of occasions that if NATO or European NATO member states will go ahead with their plans to attack Russia, Moscow will retaliate with all means with all means, and that includes nuclear weapons too. And I remind you, dear friends, that Russian president stated on this matter that if Europe attacks, then soon there's going to be no one left from European elites with whom we can have negotiations about the escalation or the capitulation, I will add, of those European states, right? And this was a very clear message from Russian president. So yeah, NATO countries, they can prepare for whatever, but societies in the West, societies in Europe should wake up, man, should wake up until it's too freaking late, if they can. And I remind you, dear friends, that European military leadership is overtaking now Americans inside NATO. And in previous my update, I did share with you information that UK will take over leadership of Norfolk, which is responsible for maritime operations in the North Atlantic, Arctic, by the way, right? Included. Italy will receive command of their headquarters in Naples, which plans NATO activities in the Mediterranean. Poland and Germany will be given command of their headquarters in Bronson on the rotating basis, which with Eastern Europe being its area of responsibility. So clearly globalists, by the way, are preparing for this war, right? They are preparing war, pushing for a war, and either, in my personal opinion, based on current relevant information from open sources, I already said before, and I'm standing on the same. I have the same take that either towards the end of this year or in the first half of 2027, globalists most likely will provoke direct confrontation between number of European NATO member states and the Russian Federation. And the areas of direct confrontation will be most likely Arctic, northern latitudes, right? Finland, Norway, potentially Sweden will get involved. It's sandwiched, right? So Swedish side will be sacrificed also. Sweden, also Baltic Chihuahuas, as I said, and Baltic region, generally speaking, is definitely going to be area theater of operations, and most likely Poland. These are the countries that will be hit tremendously with Russian retaliation, right? These are countries that globalists plan to sacrifice. Although, obviously, Germany, France, UK will be part of this assault on Russia, and they will be on the receiving end of Russian retaliation also. In case if globalists and their allies will go ahead with these plans to provoke direct conflict of NATO member states with the Russian Federation. US, I think, will stay out of it if it comes to direct clashes. US most likely will stay out of it, although, who knows? Let's continue with some more news, dear friends, and of course we have to talk about Middle East. Iran, because unfortunately situation is escalating there. And I have said already that, in my personal opinion, Western ruling class will definitely go ahead with their attacks on Iran because they have plans to destabilize not just Iran, but entire Middle East, to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait. I explained there many times why I think so. No need to go through details here now. Or if you want to hear it again, use the super chat feature on Rumble, by the way, ask me a question, or through any other support platform, and I will explain again, right, my take on the matter. But anyways, as it stands for now, attack on Iran and attack on the Middle East from the Western side and the Israeli side, it seems to be imminent, inevitable. And many regional countries, many countries in this world understand how dangerous the situation is, and Moscow, Beijing are actively engaged in a diplomacy, also through other means, right? And Turkey, by the way, is also has no interest to see total destabilization and destruction of their Middle East, especially because they understand that Western ruling class, if they have good enough analytics, by the way, analysts, they do understand, have to, that globalists and Western ruling class plans not to establish some friendly regime in Iran. No, man, they have no care about it. What they want is to provoke sectarian violence, ethnic violence, civil war in Iran, and then spell this confrontation, armed conflict on ethnic and sectarian lines throughout the region, right? And also to provoke potentially conflicts between the regional countries, let's say Saudi Arabia and Iran, and between their allies. That's what globalists want. That's what Western clans wants, because in this case, the region will be destabilized for years and years, right? And that's exactly their goal of the West, because in this case, they will be able to shut down navigation or significantly disrupt navigation in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait, and cut off China from this major energy source, right? And as I said, because many countries understand what is going on, they are trying somehow to save the region, right? And Turkey is no exception. Turkey did play a negative role in many places, in many areas, but this time around, if West will go ahead with its plans, that will jeopardize Turkey itself big time. And Ankara understands this, and maybe that's why Turkish foreign ministry is actively working through diplomatic means, right, to ensure that regional countries, at least regional countries, not going to fight against each other, right? And Turkish foreign minister stated that US and Iran are ready to compromise on Tehran's nuclear deal. Let me give you some details. He's mistaken, by the way. US is not compromising on nothing, but Iran does. United States and Iran are ready to compromise to secure nuclear deal, and Washington has signaled their willingness to be flexible on the demand that Tehran and its uranium enrichment on Tehran and its enrichment. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan announced, and yet again he's been misled. He's been misled by Washington if he actually believes that U.S. is willing to compromise on anything. Not happening, unfortunately, not happening. Only way U.S. will stay out of direct attacks, stay away from Iran and retreat is if Moscow and Beijing will come up with such a military steps that Washington will have no option, and Western ruling class will have no option but to stand down. Only Beijing and Moscow can restrain, force Western ruling class to exercise restraint, and the only way this can be done is if both capitals, separately or together, will make a stand that attack on Iran is attack on these countries. This type of stuff had happened in history in the past. In 1971, that's exactly what Moscow did to deter Western world from attacking India, and it worked. Western world back down, and it will work again if Moscow and China, especially if Moscow and China together, will make such a stand. Will they? I don't know, but that's the only way U.S. That's the only way Western ruling class will not attack Iran, right? It's not about U.S., by the way. U.S. is a tool. It's a weapon in hands of globalists, right, and the neocons. You should understand this. Trump is a freaking puppet in hands of globalists and neocons, right? He's freaking nobody. Literally nobody, by the way, right? Empty space. Nobody. He's there to come up with some freaking shows, and he's quite good at it, to keep attention of the public, to mislead public big time, and he did, by the way. I mean, he misled more than half of U.S. citizens, right, with this America first, make America great again ideas, right? And people believed him. People actually believed in him, right? But most of those people are, probably by now realize that they've been played. Anyways, Turkey's foreign minister is wrong. in regards to Washington, but he is definitely on point when it comes to Iran. And in my previous updates, I did share information that Tehran already make statement that they are ready to downgrade level of enriched uranium that they have, that 60% uranium, right? And earlier, by the way, Moscow actually stated that Russia can take, if necessary, in order to keep peace in the region, Moscow can actually take this enriched uranium, process it, and, for example, give back to Iran uranium that is enriched on the levels that is usable for nuclear power plants. Some smaller portions can be enriched on a higher level, up to 20%, for example, that is used in some medical equipment, right? So Russia can help with that. If Washington was serious about the escalation, they will take this deal. But they are not serious about it. They are engaged in talks with the Iranian side to gain some time, by the way, because they still don't have enough military assets in the region to sustain high-level military hostilities against Iran, right? Because what they want is not just to conduct the decapitation strike, which might succeed or fail, but what they want is to create complete power vacuum in Iran and push different groups in Iran, ethnic groups and other groups, to fight for their power, to fulfill this power vacuum, right? And that's the trajectory towards the civil war, obviously. That's what West wants, to create civil war. But to push Iranian society this far, US has to be able, US and Israel, they have to be able, and their allies have to have enough military force, right, to maintain attacks on Iran for months on end, not just for days or even weeks, but months, for many months on end. And I don't think US is in that place for this moment, at least, right? And that's why Washington is engaged in these talks with the Iranian side, to gain some more time until they will drop more military assets towards deploy more military assets towards the Middle East. But nevertheless, Iranian side was very clear that they are ready for compromises. Iran's president has announced his readiness to allow inspections even of IAEA into nuclear facilities. Iran is ready to allow inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency on its nuclear facilities to prove the absence of the military components to its nuclear program. Masoud Pezeshkian, president of Iran, stated, and there is not this positive step from Tehran, is not this a compromise? They know perfectly well IAEA was used against Iran, right? To spy against Iran and then to basically justify attacks on Iran. Israel and US used IAEA, right? But Tehran is demonstrating to the whole world again that they have no military nuclear program. They have nothing to hide in this regard. And even though they know IAEA is a compromised organization, they will still allow experts from there to go in Iran, film it, check it, make sure there is no military component to their nuclear program. But will this work? No, this will not work, by the way. When Pentagon will brief ruling class of the US that they are in a position to launch attacks on Iran, at that point, this ruling class in the US will tell their puppet Trump to come up with some statements, right, to blame Iran for derailing the talks and then to announce the military actions. That's how it's going to play out. Yet again, if Moscow and Beijing will not make a stand and will not say it publicly, whole world to hear that attack on Iran is attack on Russia and China. This is the only way we can deter Western ruling class, by the way, from attacking Iran. And on this very matter of diplomacy being used by the West, by US in this particular case, as a tool of deception, well, we have more and more reports that Pentagon is plans to deploy another aircraft carrier to the Middle East, exactly to the point that I was making, that they are not yet in a position to maintain high level of military operations against Iran. And even if the second aircraft carrier is on a move now towards Iran, I think this is still not enough. I think even second aircraft carrier is not enough. And they might send third one if they have in reserve additional aircraft carrier. There is a Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier in the Caribbean, right? But U.S. Naval buildup in the Caribbean was related to Cuba, not just to Venezuela, as I have said from the beginning, but to Cuba also. And therefore, I don't know if Pentagon will move that Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier from Caribbean towards the Middle East. But if they have another operational aircraft carrier, fourth one, probably they will move that towards the Middle East. And at that point, when US will have a lot of planes on Diego Garcia Island in the Indian Ocean, three or at least two aircraft carriers in a region, and also about dozen or two squadrons of the planes spread around their bases on the Middle East. Spread because U.S. not gonna keep on one base dozens and dozens of squadrons, because it's just too dangerous. Because literally all the military bases that U.S. has in the Middle East are in the range of Iranian missiles. So Washington, Pentagon will have no option but to deploy planes in different bases, and that's exactly what they do. By the way, we already have reports about at least three squadrons of F-35s being deployed, two squadrons of F-15s, one or two squadrons of A-10 attack planes, also a squadron of F-16s, and this process continues, right? This process continues, but yet again, for now, U.S. is not ready militarily, and I don't think they will be ready to launch attacks on Iran, at least for the next week or two. After 10-15 days of active deployment of additional forces and transfer of naval assets, that takes time, obviously, towards the region, Middle East. After that, after 10-15 days, 20 days, maybe we will see escalation in the rhetoric of the Washington towards the Tehran, right? Because probably at that point, Pentagon going to report to American ruling class that they are kind of ready. Although I have some doubts, by the way. I have some doubts. This is not a movie, right? And just because they succeed to come up with some movie stance in Venezuela, because they managed to brought entire freaking government there, including Maduro, it does not mean, and the Cubans were sacrificed, but only people they were unable to buy is the Cubans, right? Cuban security services officers, and they killed them. 32 Cuban officers were killed, right? But they brought entire Venezuelan government, including Maduro, right? And that's why they succeeded in that movie type operation to formally kidnap Maduro. In reality, they had a deal in place, right? But with Iran, it's a whole different story, and I don't think Washington even has military capabilities to achieve its goals. Globalists, Western ruling class, is in deep trouble because seems like they are believing in their own propaganda, right? And in their own capabilities. And this is a big mistake on their part, because they are weak, much weaker than they think. Much weaker. But anyways, at least if my understanding of the situation is correct, at least for the next 10 to 15, potentially 20 days, there are going to be no attacks on Iran, direct military attacks. There might be some incidents, right? But full-scale assault probably will happen after this time frame, 2-3 weeks from now. Let's see. And when it comes to deployment of U.S. assets, military assets to the region. Well, satellite images from Chinese satellite, by the way, emerge on internet on which, and you can see it right now on your screen. These red dots, by the way, are planes. Most of them are KS-135 aerial refueling tankers, and there is one RS-135 river joint reconnaissance aircraft there. And of course, U.S. needs this. Dozens of these air refueling tankers to basically assist the Israeli Air Force during the attacks on Iran, to assist U.S. Air Force during attacks, not just U.S. planes, military planes that will take off from Middle Eastern bases, but also from aircraft carriers, because current aircraft carrier strike group led by Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier stationed about 10 to 1,200 miles away from Iran, allegedly outside of the range of Iranian missiles. And it's a long range, by the way, and neither F-35s that are based on that carrier, neither FA-18s have such a range to take off, reach Iran, launcher, deploy their payload, and then go back to the aircraft carrier. They cannot do this. Their range is much shorter, right? So these air refueling tankers will become handy to refuel those planes that will take off also from aircraft carriers, right? Neither air. So preparations are underway, by the way. Preparations are underway. On daily basis, we are receiving reports about more and more military assets of Pentagon being deployed towards the region. And, there was a big boss was visiting, big boss of America, and the collective West, basically, was visiting U.S., and still is in U.S., I think. And, of course, I'm talking about this fascist Nazi mass murderer and genocidal maniac Netanyahu, right? Scum of humanity. And he had a meeting with Trump. Probably he gave some orders to Trump, how to behave, what to say, when and how and why. And all the instructions probably were delivered to Trump in a written manner, because Trump is a freaking moron, right? He might misunderstood something, so probably Netanyahu give him a written form. You dirty freaking animal! You will say this at this date, this at this date, this at this date, right? And don't mess around, or we will drown you in your freaking toilet. Probably that was the message from Netanyahu to the Trump. I would not be surprised at all, right? And later on, Trump came up with a post on his Truth Social, kind of acting tough, right? We all remember how Trump was serving his boss, Netanyahu, when he was being in the chair and then take a seat, boss, and stuff like that. Such an embarrassment for the US, this freaking animal is, man. Trump, right? And anyways, he came up with the post. He acted tough, that, blah, blah, blah. I had a meeting with Netanyahu. I insist on this and that. In reality, he's a freaking prostitute of Zionists, right? We all know that. Trump literally is a prostitute of Zionists. Period. There is no but after that. Prostitute. Okay? But because he is on the position of president, this whore, Israeli whore, unfortunately, world is forced to basically pay attention to his freaking Truth Social that no one gives a damn about otherwise. And let's go through some details of his statements there. Have just finished a meeting with the Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel and the various of his representatives. It was a very good meeting. The tremendous relationship between our two countries continues. It's not really that tremendous of a relationship, sir. Israel owns U.S., right? So is it really a relationship when U.S. is a sort of a pocket beach of Israel? Come on, man. Is this really the relationship that U.S. founding fathers were dreaming about? U.S. to become a pocket beach of Israel? I don't think so, right? And freaking tool, by the way, weapon in the hands of globalists, neocons, Zionists, and all sorts of other groups of special interests? Not really, right? But anyways, there was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran, you see, language, I insisted. Really? With whom? Netanyahu. He will force you to kneel and kiss his freaking feet, Trump, because you are prostitute. So what are you talking about, dirty fucking bitch? So there was nothing definitive reaching other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. What deal? What they want, really? It's so BS, by the way. It's so freaking BS that это тошнотворно даже комментировать этих животных, блин. It's just sickening to even comment on these fucking animals, man. Right? It's so fucking fake, everything, man. Related to the West, related to US, by the way. US leadership, Israel, man. Scum of fucking humanity, man. Anyways, let's continue. If it cannot, we will just have to see what their outcome will be. Last time, Iran decided that they were better off not to make a deal. Really? You see these freaking liars, man. Last time around, there was a 6th round of negotiations to take place. It was planned already. An Iranian delegation was in Oman. And this prostitute of Israel, Trump, received order to launch bombing campaign against Iran. That's what happened. Iran never walked away from talks. So what this dirty fucking animal is talking about here? Berlin. So last time Iran decided that they were better off not making a deal, and they were hit with their midnight hammer. That did not work well for them. Hopefully this time they will be more reasonable and responsible. Additionally, when Trump talks about responsibility, that's whole another level of freaking, I don't know, man, nonsense. But yeah, that's the times, by the way, these freaking crazy times that we are living in, isn't it? And we have to endure this nonsense, right? Because what else are you gonna do, man? I mean, you cannot move into another universe, right? To get rid of this fucking garbage. Anyways, sorry for being a little emotional, but I mean, fuck him all, man. Let's be real. Western elites are scum of humanity, and they did not really deserve no freaking respect from anybody. And the real talk is needed, man. We all of humanity have to say, Western elites, you are scum of humanity. You are existential threat for all of us, for all of humanity, and we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna fucking exterminate you. We have to stand up for ourselves, man, as a humanity, right? There is no time for freaking political games and political correctness and stuff. We have no freaking time, man, for this shit. Anyways, additionally, we discussed tremendous progress being made in Gaza and the region in general. There is a true peace in the Middle East. Thank you for your attention to this matter. True peace. After this so-called peace agreement was reached, hundreds of civilians were killed. Hundreds of Palestinian civilians were killed and wounded by Israeli fascists and the Nazis. And this dirty fucking animal is talking about peace in the Middle East. And same time, it's not just the Gaza, by the way, but Israeli freaking fascists are killing innocent people in Lebanon, by the way, on daily basis, literally on daily basis. And these freaking fascists are killing civilians, kidnapping civilians, terrorizing civilians in the West Bank and occupying their territory. And these fucking animals are occupying territories in Syria too, by the way, and killing Syrian civilians. And this garbage, Trump is talking about true peace in the Middle East. What? Anyways, man, that's his statement, right? That's the statement of this garbage. Anyways, right now you can see on your screen beta images of Russian-made Mi-24 Night Hunter helicopter in Iranian Air Force. Camouflage on their helicopter clearly indicates that this is a Iranian. This is a helicopter in Iranian militaries now, and they're good, by the way. good. Many members of our community, quite every now and then, were complaining why China is not helping Iran, why Russia is not helping Iran, why Moscow or Beijing did not doing this or that. I mean, for God's sake, dear friends, there is some mechanisms, right, that are in place when it comes to relationships between the different countries. And quite often, work that is done between the countries are either classified or not really publicized that much. And it does not mean, just because you did not hear bravado from either Moscow or Tehran about a great level of cooperation between the two, does not mean that Moscow is just sitting back here and just observing the situation. No, Moscow is trying to assist all the countries in this world that are under the attack of this scum of humanity that Western elites are. But one should understand, Russian Federation today is not Soviet Union some 50 years ago, by the way, right? These are different countries, different capabilities, right? And I mean, what we expect from it's not Russia that has 800 freaking bases all over the world. It's US, right? So, I mean, of course, we have whole world has certain expectations from Russia, right? But we don't have to exaggerate capabilities of Russia. Moscow is doing to help this world as much as it can, right? Quite often without any publicity at all. And right now you can see on your screen example of such a work. One of the best attack helicopters in this world in a disposal of Iranian militaries. Good, right? So before anyone will go ahead with their criticizing Moscow, please, man, just learn a little more. Know subject better, and then okay, let's have a informed conversation, right? Meanwhile, U.S. So-called leadership is exercising idea now to detain or hijack basically oil tankers that are related to Iran, and I'm afraid that's exactly what they're gonna do. Process is already begun, and just a few days ago there was reports, isn't it, that U.S. militaries hijacked a tanker in Indian Ocean, and there were also some rumors, by the way, unconfirmed information, because no officials ever said anything about it, but there were rumors that allegedly Indian militaries, Indian Navy, assisted U.S. In detaining this tanker, and there were rumors that Indian militaries themselves detained 4 other tankers under the orders of Washington. So, yet again, no officials made any claims, or at least I did not see it in the media, confirming that Indian side actually detained 4 tankers, but that's the rumors on internet, right? And I mean, it is clear, by the way, that Washington did manage to put so much pressure on New Delhi that India is kind of distancing itself now, little by little, step by step, without any extraordinary moves, but step by step from Russia, for example, from Iran, even from China. All the relationships between India and China were never really great. So yes, India is under tremendous pressure, and this pressure already influences, from what I have seen, by the way, already influences the New Delhi's policies. But let's hope no matter what, relationships between New Delhi and Moscow are gonna stay strong and very friendly always, right? And Moscow, of course, understands, by the way, there are gonna be no hard feelings on Russian side if India would not be able to withstand the Western pressure now. We understand that, I mean, only so much each of the countries can endure when it comes to pressure and pain, right? And India is under tremendous pressure. So therefore, from Moscow side, they're going to be setbacks in terms of relationships in India, but New Delhi should keep in mind that only so much they can distance themselves from Russia. At some point, they might cross the line of no return, after which instead of being strategical partners, we will just become just countries that have diplomatic relationships, which is not going to be good for either of us, right? Anyways, let's continue. And I remind you, dear friends, that a few days ago, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan also made a statement that Turkey might change its stand on nuclear weapons if other countries will go ahead with the acquisition of the nuclear weapons. And I have said it before that he definitely, I think Turkish side did not mentor Iran, because they know perfectly well Iran has no military nuclear program. What he meant is that if European countries, let's say Germany, Sweden, anyone else, I don't know, has Spain, Italy, if there will be breach of non-proliferation, if countries left and right will go ahead with their military nuclear programs, then Turkey will do the same. And understandably so, by the way. And I think nuclear non-proliferation is a part of a past now. I don't think world will be able to implement enough pressure on non-nuclear countries that have nuclear ambitions not to go ahead with their nuclear military programs. And Germany, by the way, and Sweden, if they want to, Japan on the other side, I mean, they can build nuclear weapons. They have technology. They have all the means necessary for that, right? So I guess it's only a matter that we will see massive breach of nuclear non-proliferation, and Turkey definitely will follow those countries, which will put humanity over their tremendous risks, obviously, right? Even closer to doomsday. Also interesting news that Kremlin not planning to participate in the first meeting of Trump's so-called Board of Peace. This was said by press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, and this is also good, by the way. Topic itself is still being discussed by the Russian Foreign Ministry, according to Peskov, and yet again, Moscow is emphasizing that in terms of international affairs, Russia considers UN to be main platform. Not some alternatives that someone wants to create, but UN. No matter how weak UN is, there is no alternatives to that platform, right? There is no alternatives. And if American ruling class was thinking that they're going to create this alternative with this so-called peace border, no, they are mistaken. Neither Moscow, neither China are joining this nonsense, right? And also, by the way, when it comes to Middle East, Palestine, in this particular case, Russian ambassador in Israel stated that Moscow is ready to deploy immediately field hospital, and Russian doctors are on standby to go to Palestine and provide all the necessary assistance to the locals there. But unfortunately, there are some issues with their permit and their security guarantees, issues that Russia is facing due to Israeli side being against it, I guess, right? So once again, information clearly gives you understanding what kind of elements are in charge there in Israel, that they are not issuing security guarantees and to Russian doctors, medics, by the way. That will help ordinary people, Palestinians that need medical assistance, desperately need medical assistance. And when I say, by the way, Israel is a fascist freaking entity, that's exactly what it is. When I say majority of Israelis are fascists, that's exactly how it is, man. Majority Israelis are freaking fascists. And they're going to be no true peace in the Middle East until this fascist entity Israel is demilitarized and denazified, and until these fascist Israelis that are majority there are going through the denazification program to become normal humans again, with a heart and with their understanding and some sympathy to others. But right now, majority Israelis are freaking fascists, man. They don't see anyone else to be human, man. They see all of us as animals, man, non-humans. That's their ideology that they are indoctrinated in. They don't consider you, me, or anyone else, by the way, to be human. And before anyone says anything supporting this fascist entity and these fascists should think about it, that those fascists don't consider them to be humans, man, right? Also, Indonesia is preparing to send up to 8,000 troops to Gaza as a part of a peacekeeping force under the Trump's Middle Eastern plan. And yet again, I have some doubts that Israel will allow 8,000 Indonesian troops to enter Gaza Strip. I really doubt this. 80, maybe. But not even 800, I think, and definitely not 8,000, because 8,000 is the two brigades, by the way. That's a strong force, right? Especially if these troops of Indonesia will be well equipped and trained, right, to conduct some policing operations if necessary and to protect the civilians, right? I remind you, dear friends, that Indonesia is biggest country in this world in terms of Muslim population. Some I don't know this, but country with the biggest Muslim population is not located in the Middle East or Africa. It's in global South. Indonesia is the country with the biggest Muslim population, and Jakarta is ready to send 8,000 of its troops that already are undergoing training, by the way, to be deployed. TASS news agency is reporting that, U.S. license for Venezuelan oil prohibits deals with persons from Russia, Iran, DPRK, and Cuba. By the way, yes, U.S. leadership is definitely acting as a colonial masters of Venezuela nowadays, isn't it? Washington is deciding with whom Caracas will do business and with whom not. How long people of Venezuela will keep up with this nonsense, I don't know, and they're going to realize that they've been played. But they will wake up one day. It's only a matter of time, by the way, and armed resistance against the occupying regime or colonial regime will be gone. I have no doubts about it. And current situation cannot stand there for long. And there is billions of dollars of investments in Cuba, by the way, from Russia, from China, from other countries, right, that are now basically not lost yet completely, but are jeopardized. And this is also something to keep in mind. These investors that might lose potentially billions of dollars of investment, tens of billions of dollars of investments, according to some reports, tens of billions of dollars of investments. These companies, these entities, in order to maintain some chances of reclaiming their assets, they might actually choose to, let me pay this private military company $100 million, right? And let them deal with this American colonial regime there. They might do it, man, right? Let me pay for private. They might say that I'm gonna pay this military company, this private military company, and that private military company, send them into Venezuela to basically assist locals to organize better way armed resistance against their colonial regime. And I think that's exactly what is going to happen, man. I think that's exactly what is going to happen, because if you were an investor, if you invested $30 billion in Venezuela, I mean, you're not going to just turn your back and go away, right? Just because Washington decided that they are now in charge, right? And they own Venezuela. No. You better spend another billion, by the way, and make sure that if you're not going to get your money back and investments secured, then no one else will. That's what you will do, man. Correct? Kommersant newspaper is reporting that Russian embassy announced their imminent start of the oil deliveries to Cuba. Members of our community, yet again, some members of our community, or maybe these people were not really members, but just come across my channel and they're commented something. But I read comments. I read comments, and they're not just on my channels, but I read comments elsewhere too, because I want to know what people think, right? And this is one of the ways how you can have a better understanding, not necessarily 100% understanding, but better understanding of public opinions, right, about different matters, either here in Russia or elsewhere. So that's why I read comments, one of the reasons, right? And so there were critical comments a couple of times that why Russia is not assisting Cuba and this and that. And well, as I already mentioned, by the way, while talking about Russia-Iran relationships, there is certain architecture in place in terms of relationships between the countries, right? And there is certain steps that has to be taken. Cuba has to ask Russia, right? Cuba has to provide necessary infrastructure so that Russia will deliver on it, right? If Cuba is ignoring Moscow, if Havana is not really seeking contact with Moscow and not creating basement on which Moscow might take certain place, then what Moscow can do, man, right? So probably there was some work in the place this time around. And I remind you, until Havana was receiving oil from Venezuela, Cuban leadership was not really that keen, right, to do business with either Russian side or Chinese side. They always had some different ideas how things should be, right? And they have every right to do so. It's their country, their choice, right? But I guess this time around something is changing, and there was some talks in the place, and Russian ambassador in Cuba stated that Moscow's assistance, humanitarian aid is coming. Moscow's assistance is imminent. So Russia plans to send humanitarian aid in the form of oil and the petroleum products to Cuba as soon as possible. Russian embassy in Havana told the Izvestia Russian newspaper Moscow could face economic and political consequences as a result of this decision. Experts warn. Igor Yushkov, an analyst at their National Energy Security Fund, stated that any support for Cuba would provoke opposition from the United States. He also noted that given the budget deficit, Russian authorities are unlikely to hand over fuel to Havana. The previous large-scale oil shipments to Cuba, 100,000 tons from Russia, took place in February 2025. The publication notes. So Russia is helping Cuba, by the way, right? According to calculations by Nikolai Dudchenko of FG Finam, this volume would currently last the Republic only 19-20 days, given average consumption of 37,000 barrels per day. And this is a tiny amount of energy, of course, but at least something, right? And yes, it is true, by the way. U.S. Did made clear. U.S. leadership did made it clear that they will impose restrictions, additional sanctions. They will basically confront anyone that will try to assist Cuba. And you know what? We don't give a damn, and I don't give a damn. Let's help Cuban people, man, right? And fuck the U.S. administration, fuck him all, right? Let them impose another 10,000 sanctions. Only way we can live, by the way, and we should live on this earth while maintaining dignity. This is only way forward, right? We constantly, day in, day out, have to try to become better human beings, become better societies, better countries, right? This is a constant work in progress. And just because some genocidal maniacs that are in charge of US or the collective West, generally speaking, are threatening us with their sanctions, we don't have to back down and refuse to assist millions of people of Cuba if we can, right? And I think we can. And I'm really glad, by the way, that Russian embassy made this statement. right, that Russian assistance to Cuba is imminent. This is a very strong word, right? This is not some doubts about the subject, but it's imminent. So help is coming, by the way, right? And let's help, man. Let's help as much as we can. Cuban people, not just with energy, but with whatever, right? And in regards to Cuba, by the way, RIA Novosti also reported that flights from Russia to Cuba will be suspended due to fuel shortages on their island. Planes are unable to refuel, right, to fly back. And the reports are that about 4,000 Russian tourists are now stranded on an island. And of course, they will be provided with assistance. Additional planes maybe planes will fly with the tankers, aerial tankers that will bring some fuel to refuel passenger planes to bring our tourists back. But yet again, Russian embassy was very clear that Russia is planning to send fuel to Cuba, right? And so this tremendous energy crisis and humanitarian crisis that people of Cuba is facing probably will be at least partially resolved, right? And yet again, as an ordinary citizen here in Russia, I'm all in support of assisting people of Cuba with any means, right? With every means, by the way, energy, food, everything. Let's help them, man. If necessary, let's begin campaign, by the way, and all of us can, like, I don't know, man, donate some funds, right, as much as we can to just fund the assistance to the Cuban people in this during these hard times, right? No matter what government is in Cuba, what kind of relationship this government has with either US or anyone else, we are talking about innocent people, civilians, right, that didn't deserve to be terrorized by these genocidal maniacs that are in charge of US and their collective West in general. So help is coming, by the way. Help is coming. Hopefully we will stand with the people of Cuba as much as we can. RT is reporting, by the way, that Beijing warns annihilation of the Taiwan attack and deployment idea. Beijing has warned of annihilation for any forces in Taiwan that attempts to use US-supplied missile systems to launch preemptive strikes against the mainland China. On Tuesday, Chinese military spokesman Yang Bing criticized the idea of forward deployment and suggested that speculations about such systems being used to attack China was increasingly absurd and overconfident. He said such a notion were propagated by elements advocating for Taiwan's formal independence, warning they risk provoking war and would suffer certain annihilation if a conflict begins. And the Taipei, by the way, administrative center of this Chinese province, Taiwan, some officials in Taipei began exercising idea of forward deployment of US-made HIMARS multi-launch rocket systems and also ATACMS missiles, tactical missiles, and some even went as far as to say that, well, they can launch preemptive attacks on on China, preemptive strikes on China. And of course, Beijing had to react on this craziness, right? And Beijing is warning that, well, you do something crazy, Taipei, you will get obliterated, right? That's the Chinese response. And of course, we all understand that it's only a matter of time and Western ruling class will provoke confrontation between Taiwan and their mainland China. And I think Chinese response, by the way, will be absolutely overwhelming. We cannot even imagine how overwhelming Chinese response is going to be because, of course, Beijing is monitoring the special military operation, how events went down, right? Plan A, Plan B, and so on. And I don't think China will exercise restraint. Taipei will allow itself to be used by the Western ruling class as a weapon against China. They Western ruling class will provoke military hostilities between this self-governing province of China and Beijing will be beginning of unprecedented scale of military operation that China will conduct. It's gonna be something out of this world, man. That's how overwhelming Chinese strike gonna be, and I think they will establish control once conflict will begin. I think China will establish control over the Taiwan and all the other small islands that is under Taipei's control in matter of days, literally in matter of days, maximum matter of weeks, and all those islands, including Taiwan itself, will be under operational, most likely complete control of their Chinese forces, although some resistance here and there might last for another month or two, but general control over the islands will be in Chinese hands, either in the days or maximum weeks. China gonna respond with absolutely overwhelming force, by the way, because they're not gonna deploy same tactics as we did during the special military operation, because I don't think they want their special military operation to last for years and years. That's my understanding, by my reading of the big picture. We will find out. We will find out how close to the reality my understanding will be when, not if, but when Western ruling class will finally provoke direct military clashes between Taiwan and mainland China. Few more news, dear friends, and I will end the news segment on that. Gazprom Neft, Russian energy major, has discovered its largest oil field in Yamal, Russian region, in 30 years. In past 30 years, good. Actually, Russian oil company Gazprom Neft has discovered the field with reserves of 55 million tons of oil in the Arctic zone of the Yamal-Nenets Autonomous Okrug. This is the largest discovery in Yamal in the last 30 years, the company press service reported, and they're good, by the way. I mean, 55 million tons more in Russian oil reserves. Great. Kommersant newspaper is also reporting that Total Energies has acquired Lukoil's stake in a Dutch Zeeland refinery. French energy giant Total Energies has acquired 45% of stake in a Zeeland oil refinery in the Netherlands from Lukoil. Reuters report, citing sources, the company does become the sole owner of the facility, and I guess this can be considered as a good news, because after Anchorage summit, where allegedly some important agreements were reached between Putin and Trump, Washington began implementing, instead of de-escalating, Washington began implementing even harsher policies, or more hostile policies towards Russia. And just recently, about 2 months ago, they imposed additional sanctions on Russian energy sector. Russian energy majors, Lukoil and Rosneft, were sanctioned, and therefore these companies are now forced to basically sell their foreign assets. And that's the result of it. Lukoil is get rid of its assets in Netherlands. I guess this 45% in this business, 45% stake, was sold under the discounter, but nevertheless, it's better than nothing, right? Because under the sanctions, Lukoil could not operate with these assets anyways. So that's the news in regards to this matter. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting that the United States has increased LNG exports to the European Union to a historic high. Over the past 11 months, the United States has supplied the European Union with LNG worth 23.2 billion euros. And I guess European citizens or citizens of European countries appreciate these deliveries of US LNG that costs them at least 30 to 50% more than Russian energy. But yeah, probably Europeans are happy to pay more, right? I don't know, man. I did not see mass demonstrations in Europe, in any European country, actually, challenging anti-Russian stands and the anti-Russian policies of their own governments. So therefore, I guess citizens, majority at least seems like, of citizens in European countries are very happy to pay more for energy to enrich American energy companies. Okay, by the way, your choice. Your choice. Get ready to pay even more because European dependence on U.S. energy supplies is only increasing, right? And while being practically monopoly on European markets, of course, U.S. energy companies will use the situation to increase prices, literally on a year-on-year basis, maybe even on a monthly basis, by the way. But yet again, if Europeans are happy to pay more, then let them pay. China continues to actively get rid of U.S. government bonds. Also, something interesting, I think, it's not just China. Many other countries in this world are dumping U.S. bonds because after what Western ruling class did in regards to Russia, when Russian frozen assets being stolen, basically frozen and stolen. Of course, by the way, many countries worldwide have doubts now how secure, how safe and secure their investments are in the Western financial and the banking system. That includes U.S. also, and therefore China, India, Russia don't really have much left in U.S. assets, but all the countries are dumping, basically. Even European countries are dumping U.S. bonds, right? And this is one of the reasons why process of de-dollarization is accelerating, among other things, right? Weaponization of their Western currencies, including dollar and so on and so on. And I think, by the way, it's only a matter of 10 to 15 years from now. And and U.S. will face unprecedented scale of economical, financial, and economical crisis. They will have no option but to rebuild their economy on new principles because current system is crashing. And it's gonna be tough, man. It's gonna be tough on ordinary citizens. But yes, they should get ready, man. U.S. citizens should get ready for what is about to happen there because it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive crash. Economical crisis during the first half of 20th century will be just nothing compared to what's going to happen now, right? Everything going to crash, man. Dollar going to crash. Stock market's going to crash. Housing market's going to crash. Trade, everything gonna crash, right? U.S. will go through hardships that we went through in 90s, and I'm telling you, man, it was hard, man, right? To put it mildly. Anyways, dear friends, this is it. This is it for today's news segment. I'm checking now Rumble. There was no super chat there to react on. Let me check also Boosty. Nothing on Boosty, and Anna did not send me no screenshots about any comments or the questions through PayPal or donations. So therefore, this is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care. And dear friends, about possible changes in schedule, in the programming, of course, I will let you know in my programs. Also, I will write about it on my Telegram channel. And dear friends, I'm working now to create a donation system on my Telegram. I tested yesterday and it worked. I want to test it more today, and then I will let you all know how that things works. And also I want to create a private channel on Telegram, and it will be paid subscription there. So if members of our community have issues, any other support platforms that I'm using, then maybe they will find it interesting to or possible to join this private channel of mine on a Telegram. But I will create it. I will let you know about it in days. If you like my work today, by the way, please click that like button, leave some commentary, and also if you want to support, under this video in description box and in a pinned comment, you will find links, by the way, to PayPal, Boosty, my Patreon page. Subscribe if you can, and then you can support through those means if you can and if you want to. Okay, dear friends, have a wonderful day, and take care. Bye.